It was a morning like any other, but everything felt different. I stepped out of the house, and dampness in the air lingering from last night's rain, and the gray clouds overhead seemed to press down on my chest, heavy and unyielding. The world was silent. Too silent, almost. My thoughts were drowned by that quiet, that emptiness I'd grown so accustomed to in the months after losing Emily. She'd been my world, my reason for getting up every day, and now she was gone. It's funny how, after someone you love slips away, time just keeps moving forward. The clocks tick, the seasons change, but somehow you're left behind. Alone, I'd gotten used to the routine. A cup of coffee, an unread book, the empty chair beside me where she used to sit. A small, quiet life, hollowed out by grief. Some days were worse than others, but today it felt different. I didn't know why, I didn't know how, but there was something calling me outside the house, pulling me toward the street. As I walked down the driveway, I saw it, a cardboard box, discarded carelessly at the edge of the sidewalk. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed like it had always been there. It was odd, something about it didn't sit right. I glanced around, but there was no sign of anyone, no one nearby, no cars passing by. Just me, the box, and the silence. As I approached, I could hear the softest whimper, almost drowned out by the hum of the wind. My heart skipped a beat. I knelt down, eyes scanning the box. There, curled up, trembling from the cold, was a small white puppy. Its fur was matted, its eyes wide and frightened, but it didn't bark, didn't move. It just looked at me, as though it had been waiting, expecting someone to come. I reached out slowly, my fingers brushing the cardboard. The puppy flinched, but it didn't run away. It was like it knew I wouldn't hurt it. Gently, I lifted the little creature into my arms, feeling its tiny heartbeat quicken against my chest. That's when I saw it, a note, folded carefully, lying underneath the puppy. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper, the ink smudged in places, the handwriting hurried but clear. Please take care of him. He needs you. He's all I have left. There was no name, no explanation, just those words. I didn't know what to feel. I wanted to cry, but for some reason, all I could do was hold that little pup tighter. I looked at his eyes, those dark, soulful eyes that seemed to carry a weight much too heavy for such a small being. It was as though he understood something that I didn't, something I wasn't ready to face. I stood up, cradling him carefully in my arms. The wind had picked up, and the clouds above threatened more rain, but there was something comforting about the feel of the puppy's warmth against my chest. I walked back to the house, feeling like I was bringing something in with me. Not just the puppy, but a reminder of a life that was still worth living. Something had shifted inside me, a small crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. Days passed, and the puppy, I hadn't named him yet, became part of my daily routine. He followed me everywhere, even when I sat in silence, remembering Emily. He'd nuzzle at my side or lay his head in my lap, and it was as though he understood that I wasn't ready for much. I wasn't ready for joy, but I could accept his quiet presence. There were moments of clarity I didn't expect, small but powerful. One afternoon, as I sat by the window, lost in thought, I noticed the way the sunlight filtered through the branches of the old oak tree in the yard. I watched the way the puppy's tail wagged when he saw a bird in the distance, how he darted toward the door whenever he heard a car. His excitement was contagious, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of something. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. I don't know when it happened, but after a week or so, I found myself speaking to him more, telling him about my day, Emily, about the quiet loneliness I'd been living with. And he listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just lay there with his big, brown eyes, offering nothing but the comforting presence of a being who simply wanted to be near. Then, one morning, I decided to take him for a walk. The air was crisp, and the sun had started to peek through the clouds. As we walked through the park, something extraordinary happened. A small child, no older than 5 or 6, approached us, her eyes wide with curiosity. She was holding a stuffed bunny tightly in her hands. "Can't I pet your dog?" she asked timidly. I smiled softly and nodded. Of course, the child knelt down, slowly extending her hand toward the puppy. He sniffed her, then nuzzled his face against hers, and for a moment it was as if the world had stopped. The girl's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. pure, unguarded joy. And then she did something I wasn't expecting. "Can you say thank you?" she asked the puppy, her voice so small, so fragile. I watched her, confused, before realizing she was speaking to the dog as if it could understand her. And then, in the softest voice, I heard her say something I hadn't expected to hear. "Thank you for being here." Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't stop them. The quiet magic of that moment hit me hard. This wasn't just a dog. This was a small, silent savior who, with no words, was teaching people to open their hearts again. But it wasn't just the child. It was the elderly man on the bench, smiling at us as we passed by. The young woman jogging, who slowed down to give the puppy a scratch behind the ears. Even the barista at the coffee shop, who leaned down and gave him a treat. All of them caught up in the puppy's quiet charm. Everywhere we went, the puppy brought something with him. A smile, a moment of connection, a memory of something lost. It wasn't just me who was healing. It was everyone he met. I returned home the day, my heart a little fuller, but still uncertain. I had a puppy now. But I still didn't know who had left him by the side of the road, or why. The days that followed were a blur of small miracles. The puppy, still nameless in my heart, had become a part of the fabric of my life, weaving his presence through my mornings, my quiet evenings, my sorrow-filled nights. And it wasn't just me who was transforming, it was the people around me too. He had a way of softening the hardest hearts, of making people smile when they didn't think they had it in them. But despite the warmth he brought into our lives, the question lingered. Who had left him behind? Why did they do it? It gnawed at me every time I looked into those eyes that held so much trust despite the neglect. I knew he deserved answers just as much as I did. One afternoon, after taking him to the park, I noticed a woman sitting alone on a bench, her face buried in her hands. She looked lost. I hadn't seen her around before, but something about her felt familiar, like I'd seen that sorrow before. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, and instinctively I turned to the puppy at my side. Without a second thought, I led him over to her. At first, she didn't notice us, but when he gently nudged her hand with his nose, she looked up, her eyes red from crying. There was a brief moment where neither of us said anything, just the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to cry in front of you." I sat beside her on the bench, and the puppy, as if understanding, lay down at her feet, his head tilted up in quiet attention. "It's okay," I said softly, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Sometimes we all need someone to listen." She wiped her eyes and gave the puppy a tentative pat. "He's so sweet. I'm not sure I deserve this." "None of us do," I said, my voice carrying a weight I hadn't intended. "But we all get second chances, don't we?" She looked at me, her expression filled with sadness, then back down at the puppy. She reached down to scratch his ears. I left my dog in a box once, and I never saw him again." Her words were like a punch to the gut. I wasn't sure if she realized what she had said, but I knew in that moment the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The puppy's past, my past, a past, it was all tangled up in this moment. I could see the deep guilt in her eyes, the longing to undo what couldn't be undone. But there was something else, too, a flicker of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for redemption. "I know it's not the same," she continued, her voice breaking, "but he was my son's dog, and when we lost him, I didn't know what to do. So I left him by the road. I thought it would be better." Her words felt like an unspoken confession. The puppy, my puppy, had been abandoned by the woman sitting next to me, the woman who had also been drowning in grief, struggling with her own heartbreak. There was a long pause. The puppy's tail wagged softly as he sat at her feet, oblivious to the weight of the moment. She was looking at him, but there was more than just sorrow in her gaze now. There was recognition and guilt, and maybe a touch of peace. "You didn't know," I said quietly, my voice softer now. "You did what you thought was best at the time. But this little guy, he's giving us both a second chance." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time it wasn't from regret. It was a healing kind of sadness, the kind that comes when we finally let go of the guilt and allow ourselves to move forward. Can I say goodbye?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, and as I handed the puppy to her, she cradled him gently in her arms. Her fingers brushed his fur, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. A sad but honest smile. "Thank you," she whispered to him, her words barely audible. "I'm so sorry." She held him a moment longer, and then slowly she placed him back into my arms. There was a quiet understanding between us, an unspoken bond. We didn't need to say anything else. She had done what she needed to do. She had found the peace she was looking for, and in a way, so had I. The puppy didn't look back as we walked away. His tail was wagging gently, as though he knew the journey wasn't over yet. He had given her what she needed, and in turn, he had given me something I hadn't even known I needed: closure. That night, I sat on the porch with the puppy curled up at my feet. The sky had cleared, the stars twinkling above us, a quiet reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always something to hold on to. And as I looked down at him, I realized something important. I wasn't the only one who had been saved. This little creature, so small and fragile, had given us all a second chance. He had been the bridge between my grief and my healing, between her guilt, her peace. And in doing so, he had taught us both the power of love. The kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return, the kind that just exists. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it's all about. Not saving others, but allowing others, in their own way, to save you. As I sat there, the cool night air brushing my face, I couldn't help but feel that we had all been given a second chance. And in that moment, I made a silent promise to the little pup at my feet. I would never let him go. I would never leave him behind. If you found healing in this story, consider sharing it with others who might need a reminder of second chances, of the unconditional love animals give, and how their presence can transform lives. Support your local shelters, volunteer, or adopt, because every animal deserves a chance to be loved, just like every person does.